What do you mean by that?
No, because you've got to be very careful. We never wanted to be a rock band. We never wanted to be any sort of band. We never wanted to be an art rock band. We never wanted to be a student band. We never wanted to be sort of lumpen proletariat band. I just think the old fact of marketing groups is ridiculous, because it dates very fast. We're always portrayed as scruffy and stuff like that, but in fact we're fashion-wise we're always about 3 years ahead of everybody.
This album slapped together and is half-baked, and is especially rough around the edges. This album is out of tune, out of place, out of rhythm, out of mind, and out of this world. It doesn't seem like the band is even genuinely trying to convey any particular sound at all. Whatever it was, this was hardly the follow-up that fans would have liked. The players are gamely keeping up with the material that they barely know, and the attempts at experimentalism, the squawking sax that cuts through the title track, and the meandering sound collage of Papal Visit all fall flat. This album sports fabulously irritated lyrics aimed squarely at the bourgeois and undercuts by thinner, less compelling music and an uninteresting sounding Smith. Welcome to We Are the Fall podcast. This is a critic's reception. This is multiple critics' reception of the album we're going to be experiencing today and talking about, Room to Live. And I can only wonder how Mark would have taken these nice bits of feedback for this album, especially after the mostly critical success of the last album we talked about, Hex Enduction Hour.
On my third go around, Side Egg definitely grew on me a little bit, but yeah, I definitely do agree. Thin sounds, none of the bop that they can put in some of the songs. Yeah, I think it was kind of thrown together. And I mean, they went into the studio to record a single, and then Mark's idea was to just go for it and put out a full LP. So I mean, it does make sense looking back and seeing what kind of happened.
Maybe we should kind of back up to where we left off with Hex Enduction Hour, and they finished Hex Enduction Hour. The story is, Mark was second guessing if the Fall should even continue as a band. Hex Enduction Hour comes out and mostly has a good reception from critics and fans alike, and everyone's pleased. And I think that this put Mark into the mindset that he usually goes to at this point when he gets some form of critical success, which is to sabotage himself or just turn the car around and go the complete opposite direction. And so they go into the studio, like you're saying, Steve, like they go into the studio to record one thing or something that's accessible for the band to complete. And he decides, we're just going to be more spontaneous and go back to the basics where we're creating in the studio on a whim. And it's going to be a lot more exciting for me. And it's going to be a lot more probably frustrating for the band and the band members that are invited. So This is right before they're going on tour to Australia and New Zealand for a pretty extensive tour, and they're trying to just knock out a couple new songs, and it turns into Mark's little project where he is more or less trying to get a bunch of songs done on the spot, while at the same time actively I'm assuming actively alienating a couple of the band members in order to get them to eventually leave the band or be fired from the band. So that's the we it's a rough follow-up, but overall, I gotta say, these quotes for me, these bad reviews, um, they they're accurate in some regard, but I really think that there's some of my favorite tracks, singular tracks on this album. So I think it's not a throw it away album. I think there's a lot on here that's to be had, especially like you said, the A side has a bunch of cuts that I think I'll continue to go back to. Also, speaking of bad reviews, Mark had a good quote about bad reviews, which was, I like bad reviews as well, and I always keep them, not just to keep a blacklist, but about a year ago, I got addicted to bad reviews as an interpretation of the songs.
Yeah, I would imagine that Mark would like a harsh critic over a fan critic, kind of at least take it to heart more. I obviously he kept a lot of people around that liked him and liked the band and liked the idea. He went back to John Peel over and over again. A lot of the members were just people that enjoyed the sound, but I think he took the harsh critic more seriously, and that they were speaking the truth versus trying to either appease him or just in the industry, right? Like, oh yeah, fine, we'll write a good one for them.
Right.
Which he hated that, right? He didn't want anything either that he didn't earn or even anything from somebody that he felt didn't get what he was actually doing, right? Like, just, oh yeah,
Right.
you think it's good and popular? Oh, you totally fucking miss what I did there.
Right. Exactly. No, that is that. I think that's right. That's spot on. The he just he's an extreme guy, so he's going to appreciate an extreme interpretation of his music much more so than a neutral or bland interpretation, and especially just some, like you're saying, some sort of produced part of the system review that just basically is a summary of what they did. And it's basically a waste of paper to them. Before we jump into this really interesting album, I also have another quote here from Mark about this album, which is, he says that this album, Room to Live, was a good cleaning out of the system. And he didn't say this, but it basically said that this was a method that he was trying to use so that listeners were brought as close to possible to the creative process. And I like that. I like that approach, especially for him using the studio as the play space that he usually does. He's always going to be productive in the studio, but to set some sort of new structure or criteria for how the album is going to be produced is a fun game for him. And I think even not inviting, so Mark Riley and Craig Scanlon are on this album minimally, but the story goes is that Mark invited the band to the studio to record a couple new songs, and when half of the band showed up, they realized that Mark Riley and Craig Scanlon weren't invited to the studio, and that also there's other players that were invited in their place, and there was a lot of basically alienation going on actively through Mark's behavior and decisions.
I think they recorded in about 2 weeks, and it does seem to be kind of the beginning of, not necessarily the end, but the beginning of the new kind of setup in the fall,
The
where
new fall.
Mark is now totally 100% in control, not really willing to accept anybody else's influence. And so, yeah, nobody knew who was going to be in the studio on that invite day, which,
Right.
you know, I guess he made it work for another 30 years. So he had something.
That's right. And this was the start of the pattern, or the continuation of the pattern of the fall dynamic of rotating members, even though the band would go on to the majority of the band would go on to tour on that tour in Australia and New Zealand, which I'm hoping we can do one of the live recordings from that, because the band sounds actually awesome during that tour. But they go on this tour, and this is basically, even you can say what you want about the overall quality of this album as an album, and some, I think, fall fans don't even consider this maybe a proper, quote unquote, proper album, but I think this is a true and excellent document of the fall and how quickly it would flip on itself into a totally different dynamic and a totally different sound. And we're going to get a couple new sounds, I think, in a couple of these tracks that the fall has yet to at this point in their career.
Yeah, so we got album is Room to Live, released in September of 1982. It's about 47 minutes long.
And it's the last release on Camera Records before they do a Rough Trade album, and then they move on to their era at Beggar's Banquet. It's the end of the band lineup in some ways, and also the end of their tenure at Camera Records, which was a fruitful experience for, I think, the record label and the band, because they both pretty much let each other do whatever they thought was best artistically, and I think it worked out for the most part.
Kind of like we said, a bunch of different people on the songs, different credits are thrown out for each of the 7 songs. Yeah, Mark Riley's last album with them.
Yeah, and even this was the start of Craig Scanlon having a little bit of it seemed, second guessing of, is this the place for me? Even though he would have a short break with the fall and then come back to them and continue his tenure with the fall. But he did, I think it obviously would rub anyone the wrong way when your band goes into the studio and you're not called or invited. That's definitely going to sit with you, even if you think that you're getting past it, right?
Yeah, certainly knocks the wind out of your sail, right? Where you're like, oh, am I comfortable? Am I not? And I mean, maybe that was a driver to try to get him to perform better, or you never really know where it was coming from. But
yeah, that's a good point. And also, I think there was, at this point, from what I've read, there was a dynamic where Craig Scanlon and Mark Riley they didn't directly think of themselves as like a Lennon and McCartney type of duo, but they were definitely a songwriting duo together. And when you have a songwriting duo together, and then Mark Riley, it seemed, was very outspoken as far as, or became more and more outspoken as far as how the music should go and how the albums should be somewhat conducted. I think that made Mark really, it made his decision to be actively maybe trying to push Mark Riley further from the controls as far as the band's concerned, which is interesting.
And it does make sense. I guess he was not really willing to share, right? It was his band, right? In his mind, he didn't necessarily, whether he wanted the spotlight all the time or not, but he was certainly not gonna get artistically outdone.
Yeah, and it's interesting he was not willing to share even after whatever you call it, the making a band album that was Hex Enduction Hour. That's totally a band album, and it was successful, and it doesn't mean a gosh darn thing to Mark, because it doesn't matter. It's on to the next thing. He's totally in the moment of the next thing, creative process for the band, and he doesn't care about success as long as he has the means to produce something else, produce something a different way, which I appreciate. But both guys can be right, but you could see that self-sabotage is really at play as far as Mark's concerned.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost impossible to mix things up that much, introduce new members, and then and try to write an album on the spot. Like you produce. I mean, I'm sure the songs were written, but like to produce the music, write the music with totally new members, you're already on edge because you don't know who's going to be in the room when you show up that day. Like, seems like a recipe for failure.
It really does. And it also seems like he basically just actively took the controls back physically by saying, you're not physically going to be in the room because I'm going to make sure you're not physically in the room. So I have all of the control now. And when you have your drummer playing guitar and bass, and you're asking Carl Burns to play guitar and bass, and I think on a couple of these tracks they get away with it in a really interesting and cool way. But you ask your drummer, who's an excellent drummer, to play guitar and bass when you have Mark Riley and Craig Scanlon, who have just produced maybe one of the best few in a row, actually a couple in a row, art rock guitar albums ever. And not going to see it in the given moment, but it's an interesting choice, but he's always about the interesting choices. And they had some saxophone on this, and and these tracks are produced by Marky Smith, and he's the leader. And also Kay Carroll gets a bunch of production credits on this too. So
John Braley on track 4, Room to Live.
John Braley.
Brierly.
Yeah. Huh.
Not sure who that is, but
not sure. I'm not sure who that is either, but he's the producer for that. For Room to Live. Huh. Okay, let's get into it. Because like I said, even though it's a great document of the fall, the dynamic as far as their fluidity, it does have some great fall songs on here. With that being said, what do you want to start with?
Start with number 1 here, Joker Hysterical Face.
They say nothing ever changes. This is certainly true of the polyocracy. The sweetest sounds she had ever heard was the whinging and crying tunes in session. In fact, if you look pretty close enough, she had a Joker hysterical face.
That reminds me, when I was I agree with you. This one took me a long time to sink its teeth in. I was walking around listening to this one for, I don't know which time it was, but I kind of thought to myself, what is maybe a rule of thumb for how many times you have to listen to a fall album before it unveils itself to you? And I think there is some sort of rule of thumb that I've come to, and you could tell me if you've had any sort of estimation on this, but I feel like if you have listened to the fall before, you're familiar at least, then I say it's half of the number of tracks on the album. That's the number of times you have to listen to it in order to get the full appreciation. He is appreciated. But if you've never listened to the fall before or very limited, I think you have to listen to it at minimum the exact number of tracks that are on the album. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a system, or at least I, I like to play it in the background, like put it on, let it kind of do its thing where I'm not necessarily dialed in, paying that much attention, but I get the feel
That's
of
the
it.
initial. That's the initial
Yeah,
listen for you.
that's my
Okay.
initial listen
Okay.
is, yeah, let's see how it tastes, a little bit,
Yeah.
and then get through it, think about it a little bit more, and then actually pay attention, actively listen, see what the lyrics are doing,
Yeah.
see where that's going.
It's like you're taking in the landscape. You're taking in the landscape, and then the first time, and then, or the first couple of times, maybe even, right, for some of the songs, and then you're slowly honing in and focusing on little details, or the little tree over there, the mangled tree in the distance.
Yeah.
You're starting to take it in.
Checking out, does he repeats everything a lot, but is he actually repeating it, or is he
Is he saying the
switching
same
up the
thing?
is he
Yep.
switching up the word, a little word here or a word
Yep.
there?
That's always fun.
Is it on purpose? Is it an accident? Where are we at here?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you almost have to listen to the same song a couple times in a row, because as you know, these aren't
Yeah.
necessarily albums, right? It doesn't go from 1 to 7 in a chronological make sense order. Like they're kind of
Especially this one.
one-offs here, one-offs there. They're not, it's not building off of each other in any real sense. So kind of like, okay,
Hmm.
let's actually digest this one song, and then we can move on to the next and see how that one feels. Is it playing off of it, or is it just totally its own
Yeah.
entity just right after it?
I think that might have been part of the reason why this one was not received as well, is because of the combination of all the things, which is it's not it for we get this first track, Joker hysterical face, which is of it sounds just like a fall track because it has all of the fall at the current state playing this song. But then after this, we get really, you know, um varied in who's playing what and how many actual fall members are there. But I could see that this, if you're putting this on after Hex Induction Hour, which is probably the one of the most cohesive albums that they released at this point, and you put this on, you're just gonna be along for the ride of, like you're saying, one-off songs, one-off ideas, and very topical ideas, where it's not a story like Mark is used to, leading us down a path where you don't really know where you're going, or you don't make all those connections within even the first 3 4 5 6 listens. You're not making all the connections, but by, you know 8 9, you're starting to be like, oh, I do think there's a thread being tied here, or at least it's fun for me to make my own kind of linear kind of connections here, which is what much more fun. Joker hysterical face is, you know a very traditional, if you could say
Yeah.
traditional with the fall
Sure.
song.
I like the
Bouncy
I
beat.
like
Yeah.
Bouncy Beat. I like the Joker Hysterical Face is a great name. I mean, yeah.
Great lyrics. We got this reference to Ted Rogers, who apparently is a British comedian, was a British comedian and game show host for, I'm guessing, a very well-known British TV quiz show for a number of years. It looks like almost a decade. Mark's reference to him is Ted Rogers' brain burns in hell. So I'm just trying to say, what do you think? Who do you think? Let's put this in context for our American listeners. I know we got a lot of British listeners who maybe they could tell us who is, maybe put this in context of maybe
Why
some
why
current
his
day person.
brains? Yeah.
No. I just want a current day person that's like a Ted Rogers, that's on TV, game show host, and why you might have a hatred so much of this individual that his brains are burning in hell. What kind of person is that? I mean, I don't know. I don't watch that game shows anymore, but what is that? Drew Carey.
Your career. Who was the original
Oh,
Do You Want to Be a Millionaire guy?
yes,
No one
Regis Philbin. Oh yeah, Regis Philbin. Yeah, I think that is actually it, Regis Philbin. But why Mark would have such a very negative opinion about Ted Rogers, as negative as it is, it's very entertaining to me. And especially not knowing who this individual is, it makes me feel better, being entertained by that. If it said Regis Philbin's brains burning in hell, I might be like, I'm not the biggest Regis fan, but
And who was the other guy? Gilbert. Was it Gilbert Godfrey who had that genius show? Not Gilbert Godfrey.
I will no. You don't throw Gilbert Godfrey into this.
Who was the one that had the genius show? He did the eye drops commercials.
Ben Stein.
Ben Stein. Yeah, maybe Ben Stein's brains are burning.
Ben Stein. They always made him out to be somewhat of a genius, so that would make more sense.
Ted Rogers did appear on a panel show called Joker's Wild.
Oh,
so
actually, I'm kind of putting it together now.
Face.
I'm actually putting it together now. I get it. It's Ted Rogers' brains burning in hell because Mark doesn't like this sort of fake genius because he has all the answers. I'm assuming he's just the guy with all the answers. So if he's the guy with all the answers, that's fucking boring to Mark, and that's a waste of time. And also, a guy that's propped up like that, who has the card with all the answers on it, is also someone you don't really respect. So I'm with Mark on this. Actually, I say, yeah, Ted Rogers' brains should be burning in hell. I hope he's in heaven, but
his brains,
Ted Rogers, his brains can be in hell. His body, his soul is in heaven. Hopefully.
If he deserved it.
If he deserved it. If he wasn't reincarnated or any of the other possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, the last little stanza, he came home, the hi-fi was playing, he finished eating, the hi-fi cried. I mean, that's fun.
That's beautiful.
Threw that dinner down on the table.
The hi-fi cried, not even he cried. Yeah, I do like that too. And there's also a really cool, I don't know if this is intentional or not, or just a weird production maybe mistake, is there's a subtle where the volume drops at the end, where it's almost like a fake fade out, but it's so quick that I just suggest that the listeners go and listen and see if you can catch that, and tell us if you think that's an intentional thing or just a little production slip that they kept in there, because this was the take to go with.
Yeah, I do. And even just there's no cure, so find the cause for it. There's no fear, so find a case for it. The little subtle, like, it almost sounds identical, but
yeah,
keeps you thinking.
Because it's with most of the band, I'm guessing that was one of the more put together songs before they went into the studio, because it just sounds natural. It sounds like they naturally had been playing that. And now to switch it up a little bit, mostly in name, we got the Marquise Cha-Cha.
This is, Smith and Burns.
Smith and Burns.
Marquis Cha-Cha. Stranded in South America, and nothing to go home for. Just another breath in a bar. And then a Spanish comes over to me. Almost the job as a broadcaster. That's how I came to be.
So it seems like it's like a piece that Mark wanted to put to music. Doesn't that get you out of your seat and dancing? Get you moving.
Then it stops. Then nope, it's going again.
They had to do a little tape edit there because I know that there was some sort of issue with the performance, considering it was probably only just Marquis Smith and Carl Burns making this little ditty up.
It's a fun song. I mean, like you said, the lyrics are. It's
I
one
like
of
the
Mark's.
idea.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a good idea for Mark. It's one of his stories. You got a British guy that's doing something different.
Yeah, you got a British guy exploring the world, which I like, and I like that it's a couple of British guys in the studio exploring some beats, and I do like that a lot. I actually think that if they had the full band with this type of rhythm, it would be a nice, cool, interesting take on a fall, to add a fall dynamic to a beat like this. But know what this beat reminds me of, honestly, is like a preset on a real shitty Casio keyboard that would play this type of beat. And I'm not trying to put down this beat because I think, like I said, this would have been a great track if they had a full band individually playing different parts for this song. But it sounds like a preset.
They're just kind
even the bass part, it's so wild.
It's just kind of thin, right? Like everything is just like, oh man, not as many layers as you want.
Yeah,
but, I mean, I guess two dudes just putting it down, it gets you there.
He does layer his voice a little bit. There, like we're saying, it is conceptually a great idea of having, even if you want to, do the Mark character of Mark himself going to South America and like sitting in a bar and enjoying himself and the change and thinking back about what the British Empire is.
I'm surprised he didn't take it into his favorite category and have it be like the Nazis, because
what's that? Yeah, he could have gone.
There was a lot of Nazis that fled to South America for some relief, and they could never go home. So I mean, it's definitely a Brit in a bar, but
yeah, he does. I thought you're right. I could have easily seen him go down that path as well as bringing the Nazis into it, but he does have the war. His favorite, war aspect of generals and enemies and countries, and he has it all in there, all his favorite things. I think this is one where I agree with some of the critics, where this is underdeveloped. This is not, from my view, this is not ready.
Shouldn't be the second track on a full album.
It definitely should not be following a full band of the Fall members. This should probably be as a little bonus B-side, I would say. And I don't want to, we know that Mark is an exceptional lyricist, but I think one of his weakest lyrics is maybe in this song, where it's just the couplet of, "Hey, you people over there and those in the sea and in the air." Mark, come on. I know, that I'm expecting more from him. I hold him to a higher standard. And I know that's just a little couplet, but it is a good life here. Football and beer, much superior. This is Mark just feeling good that he is with his buddy Carl, and no one is there to tell him what to do,
to question him
to second guess him. To second guess him at all.
Low tax and a dusky wife, that's all right, whatever. I guess it's the 80s.
Yeah.
What's the Russo too? I couldn't find anything about that. I'm not really sure.
But the Russo, yeah, I was wondering this too, but also, doesn't he refer to, this is where our fall heads that are listening right now can let us know, please, and we'll pass on the information to everyone else. But I vaguely remember a Russo reference in earlier fall song prior to this. He does a Russo, or maybe I've just fucking listened to this too many times, where I think that this is It's just embedded in my skull now, for the best. But anyone out there, just tell us, please.
Yeah, Russo. There's a restaurant in Finland that's been around since 1979 called Russo. They serve Italian cuisine. Maybe that's what he's talking about.
No vegetables, so or limited vegetables. That might be what Mark like. I mean, that might be up Mark's alley. Y'all let us know, and also let us know about the Ted Rogers. You know, if he was a cool guy or not. So moving on, we got okay. So let's just back up a little bit. Let's just refresh. We got Joker Hysterical Face lead off track, full band, awesome, great. Thought we were getting something that was going to follow up Hex Induction Hour with some authority, or at least to satiate us for the before the next release, which we were just hoping was a couple months after this. Then we got the little cha-cha slide, which we agree it's a little bit lacking, but now we go into, in my opinion, one of my favorite slow burner fall songs ever. Maybe, I don't know, maybe my favorite.
You just love Mark bitching about the country.
I fucking love it. And let's listen to it. Hard Life in the Country.
It's hard to live in the country and the present state of things. Your body gets pulled right back. You get a terrible urge to drink.
I'm giving this one a little heart. Thumbs up, heart.
Thumbs up for this?
Oh, yeah.
I have just nothing to do. You're in the country.
Yeah.
Have a drink. Nothing going on. Your leather soles stick to the cobblestones. That's, you can imagine that. All the David Bowie lookalikes hanging out in the country. It's a slow burn, I think, like we said, there's either technical issues or some interesting production values. Bass coming in and out. Just the sound of it in general is somewhat unrefined.
Yeah, just like at the beginning, it has the bass fade in and out but at the beginning, like it is some sort of technical issue. But I do like that it's an artifact. It just shows that how, like Mark was trying to convey to whoever he was talking to, he was trying to bring the listener as close as he could to a raw product that was being developed in the studio, which is great. It's so fun. This is my favorite. I mean, I just love everything about this, even though it doesn't have my favorite dudes, guys, people in the band playing on this. It does get the point across and the vibe across of the story of the situation much better than the last track. This one is okay. So Mark does not know how to drive or doesn't care to drive. He doesn't really want to leave the city ever. So it's cool that he puts him into a situation where he has to write from the perspective of what it would be like if I myself or someone like me was forced to live out in the country. And I just like that he put himself out there because it would be so easy for him. And in the next track, we get him back in the city, but it's easier to write about things you know about. But to him to just put himself out there, and it's so dark, unsettling in the jagged guitar jangle that's going on there. And it doesn't really change up, but I feel like this is a song where the repetition actually does go someplace because the guitar does slowly get more intensified, which I really love.
I was just gonna say, and it's nice too because he pulls in some American countries, some obviously English
Yeah.
countryside. You're not really sure where he's at. You can kind of place yourself there if you
Hmm.
if you want. And like you said, kind of the repetitive sound, but not. It's nice that it's not the repetitive lyrics with the repetitive sound, where you're like the story continues as the guitar takes you there. New Arthur Cadman
Hmm.
on guitar for this song with him. Recognizes Cadman with a C, which it was actually spelled with a K. So it seems like Mark really knew this fella.
Yeah, his guitar playing is great, and it's a type of guitar playing that honestly, I think harks back to maybe some Martin Brahma style guitar, where it's very top end trebly, and it sounds so cool. And Mark is talking about anxiety of living in the country where the town kind of councils are in charge of everything and everyone knows each other. And I like that he says David Bowie lookalikes are all around, and David Bowie sound alikes are all around the village, or they're part of maybe the council. The councilmen all look the same like that. They're kind of put together like that, and everyone else is more of a rural country person, and they're in charge of them. And yes, and I love that the he talks about New Jersey car parks in the same kind of stanza as uh you know or even near next to adjacent to the country people, the rural people kind of coming to his doorstep or outside of his house or his wherever he's living in the country, and it's being almost like a very ominous presence where these people and they know him or they know that he's there and they're just kind of surrounding his house. And I really like this. I like this imagery. I could feel that Mark would fucking lose his goddamn mind
Right.
out there.
And he's just
Yeah.
trying to convince himself, right? Like it's good to live in the country. It's good. I'm having a good time out here.
Yeah, I think that's sarcastic. I think that's like the words being told to him, and then he's the character out there, or that character is out there, and they're like, I'm gonna fucking blow up. I'm gonna explode out
Yeah.
here.
Just gonna get fall down drunk in the road.
And one of my favorite parts of did you catch what he says at the beginning? I mean, have you?
Yeah.
He says a bit reedy.
I think it's basic. I think you said it's a bit like a reading.
Oh, it's a
Like
bit like a reading.
it's like a reading of
Oh.
like a poem.
That's interesting because I always thought it was like he was telling him to be more reedy. Like, actually, that doesn't sound like him at all. Like they don't have they everyone in the fall has always said they didn't have like a musical language to talk about music, so it doesn't sound like he would say the word reedy like as in tone. It
No,
doesn't
yeah.
sound like he would do that. But so it's more like a reading, and it is a reading because it is okay. That makes a lot of sense. I love everything about this song. Like I said, one of my favorite songs, and one of my favorite parts of this song, multiple times throughout this song, if you put yourself into a country landscape and you're looking out on, let's say, a British, field or even an American countryside, the guitars get nasally sounding like geese honking. They get a dun, 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 dun. It's like a honk, and it's like geese. And I always when I hear that, I don't know how intentional that was as far as um the guitar player's idea of it. I don't think it
Yeah.
was, but it really fits. You're in the country and you're hearing the honking of these
Yeah.
geese fly by,
It's fall.
and it's
Yeah.
not it. Yeah, it's fall, right? It's fall. It's the fall playing out there. There's a darkness to that sound that's they're honking, but it's not in a typical way because it's manipulated as a guitar sound. Next time you listen to it, y'all, you just put yourself out in that field and hear those geese as they fly out of that dark nightmare. Do you want? I know you're a city boy. Would you like to go back to the city?
No.
No, come on. The city is where it's at. The city is where we're see all of our favorite music.
Yeah,
It's where you get your culture. It's where I get my culture.
you're going to get
You go out the country to get uncultured. You get a little usually from my perspective. You get away
I
from
agree.
it.
Yeah, I mean the culture, the diversity, the interesting people are certainly in
In
a
the
large
city.
populace. Yeah.
Yeah. The diversity breeds it. It breeds the culture. It breeds the different perspectives. Let's go with Mark. Let's jump in. Let's jump in the car and let's cruise back. Let's cruise away from this desolate countryside landscape, which is probably beautiful, but Mark is not really gonna take that in. And we're gonna cruise back to the city, and we're just gonna appreciate having, some creative space, creative endeavor, and some room to live.
Some people have stars and eyes. Some people want eyes and stars. They've been like that for years. They've been like that for years. I suspect they're just FFF. I just want room to live.
So saxophone. What do you think? Do you think the fall need a saxophonist?
Yeah, I freaking love saxophone in the fall, especially saxophone like that. Remember we get a little saxophone earlier on fall albums, and it was very repetitive and basically two-note monotone. It was just kind of repeating back and forth. This saxophone is fucking grooving, and I like this a lot. This actually gives me the city vibe too, because the saxophone is giving me like the bustle of cars in the street of Manchester, of any city, of Chicago. It's kind of the bustle, and this drum beat is so good as far as setting the pace.
Yeah, I liked how they even like mixed in different guitar riffs and things like that throughout it. Like it's just not typical. Where kind of playing off of Mark's lyrics was fun. I think this is definitely my favorite one on the album.
And this is Mark. Basically, we always talk about it's not Mark saying, the Mark the character is not Mark the lyricist, and Mark, or vice versa. Mark the lyricist does not mean it's Mark the character, but this is basically outlining what Mark needs in order to thrive, which is put me in the center, put me in the center of anything, the town, the studio, the band, and this is what I need. I need to be creative. I need to be in an environment that produces creativity. And this middle stanza that he has, foreigners and experts go in and through my place, turn my home into a museum like the murder squad. They scan the room for the well of inspiration. That's them checking out. He thinks just like everyone he believes is trying to imitate him, which when we're recording this 2023, 2024, basically is the truth, where there's so many bands trying to imitate him or to carry on some sort of aspect of his creative style. And this is him just pointing it out in 1982 that there's probably people just searching around for how does he get the material he gets? How does he produce the material he gets? And it's from just living in an environment that allows him to be creative. He just needs the space to do it. And that's all this song is about, which is perfect summation.
Yeah, right. There's no well. It's just it is observe, right? Sit there and observe.
Yeah.
Be in the center and observe what's happening around you in a somewhat analytical way, or even just a curiosity. I think my favorite is, some people think happy is the way to live. some men want to cram up to women. I've been down that street before. It just makes meat out of the soul. just destroys your soul.
And even the way this song starts I just kind of was calling him out for his weakest lines, but the simplicity of the way the song starts is some of his strongest lyrics, which is, some people want stars in their eyes, some people want eyes and stars. They've been like that for years. They've been like that for years. I suspect they're just if I just want room to live. That is pretty nice.
Yeah, that's a good way to end side A.
Yeah, this middle section of the album is really what I think. This is an underrated album because it gets cast off as it just gets overshadowed by some super strong full length LPs that they put out. It gets tossed to the side because it's definitely not as strong, but it has this beautiful collection of songs in the middle here that is really, I'll come back to over and over again.
Yeah, tough to follow Hex Enduction Hour, that big blockbuster album. And just so quickly to produce
blockbuster,
yeah. To produce this and not necessarily even have any reason to, or even like nod to like, hey, this is going to be even more experimental than what you're used to.
And to be a band that's so thoughtful as far as developing the songs for a very, very long extended period in a live setting, which is the way that ideally songs should be fleshed out, is to get the audience reaction, to put yourself in the situation where you say, no, we're just putting them down, and then we're going to go on tour and do the opposite, where we're going to record this bunch of new tracks, and then we're going to go on tour and refine them as we go, which is kind of the typical recording style of the modern era. And the Fall were always the reverse of that, where they had so many songs that were in development and they played so many set lists that were all new songs that they were typically refined live and then recorded, instead of recorded and then refined live after the fact, which is really cool. Should we get into this Room to Live album artwork? As we're flipping this album over to the B side, let's take a look, take a gander, and everyone at home, grab your record sleeve or your digital record sleeve and go on a little journey with us to explore the little intricacies that are on this undilutable sling of truth slab of wax.
Room to Live. I mean, typical Mark's handwriting across the front. I mean, the front just looks kind of like you would expect the back to look like. Couple photos. You're going to spin,
and it kind of is. It pretty much is. Yes.
You're going to spin this at 33 RPMs to get the full sound experience of the two musicians performing most of the songs.
Mark was always a big fan of putting all of the information right on the cover. Up to this point, that you've been on the journey with us, up to this point, this is always a steadfast thing, which is to throw in a couple photos of the band. We had a little open space here. Mark typed up some of the liner notes, which is actually my favorite. Actually, I think that is the main reason to own the Fall physical versions, is for the liner notes that are very much Mark rants or Mark little verbalizations, written pieces of his characters or his truths that he's giving to us. I think that's the reason to have it in front of you.
If you're at all being critical of the lyrics, it is fun to read that and understand what you're going to experience.
Should we look at some of the notes that he's provided here on the sleeve? So actually, this might answer, I'm going to guess it probably won't, but this might answer our question about the Russo scourge, this is what Mark provides us. The Russo scourge, due to a combination of keep fit dances and education at the hands of the state lecturers, their scum influence resulting in a rewind, their influence sweeping over oceans and into his abroad mind. Or an instance of soul sap on us white folks by this bossa nova crap. So does that answer it for you, Stephen?
Yep, Russo. I don't want any of that, I guess.
It seems very straightforward after I read this. It's very much apparent that was the case for the Russo scourge. So I'm glad that we cleared that up for everyone. And we don't necessarily agree with this perspective, but at least we have, this is what you come to us for, which is the deep dive into the little details that make this more important for everyone. Vigilante number 3 shows harsh results of technology. In yokel hangouts, horrid truth behind all that romanticized green grass. I get behind that. I get behind that one. I think that is actually spot on. And y'all can read the rest of
Yeah.
y'all can read the rest of it and enjoy for yourselves. But like we're saying, you don't have to agree with all of the rants and the written word that is provided to you. Just because you buy it doesn't mean you endorse it. I don't think that there's much of a backside to discuss, is there? I mean, basically, this looks like the backside.
I was going to say the front side looks like the back, and the back.
The front looks like the back. Let's flip it.
Detective Instinct.
You can tell by his fashion that boy's been in prison.
Do you have the instinct?
This one is, for me, this song is all about these lyrics. And I think we pride ourselves on this podcast being focused also on the fall music, which in musicianship, which is frequently underappreciated. Because Mark's lyrics are so good, a lot of the times it's just like, oh, this is just the Fall was just backing music for his words, but really the Fall band is really what makes it. I think it's the perfect minimalism for this type of kind of teardown of the police state. the lack of integrity. One of my favorite lines is just the simplest 3-word phrase of retired of integrity. That is such a great 3-word combination, and it's so fitting of this cop. I mean, this is also a song that is the cop and their donut, but this is the detective and all of their foibles and all of their caricatures of their typical selves. But it's so fun when he says, "My razor blades will cut down your entrance." Do you take anything from that?
I know. I'm sitting here like, what is that?
So that's for me. My razor blades will take down your entrance is, like the police line tape, like putting up the police line across like a murder scene or a scene, and that's supposed to say stay out, stay out. This is my area. This is where I'm the expert. This is where I'm the professional. This is where I do my work. I'm the all-seeing authority of this situation. And someone just comes in with their razor blade and
it's gone. Yeah.
And I'm in here. Guys, look, hey, I'm in this police this murder scene because I didn't obey this authoritative little piece of tape, and because someone says they're in charge of this or they know better, and hopefully they're trained, but in this situation, this person might have been trained, but their integrity is not going to get it done.
was gonna
It's
say,
not
and just
worthwhile.
the whole detective instinct, right? Like, oh yeah, how did you get there? I just trust me. I'm good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a lot more experience than you. That's basically, all of the oh, we will solve this. How are you going to solve it? We will. Don't worry about it. That's nothing. That's none of your concern. That's always the demeaning, backhanded because they think that they know better. But there's also a funny line in here, which is the man at the bar had a V-neck vest on. No, it was a V-neck waistcoat. Accurate. And then he says accurate. And I love this because this for me is a little play on he's a detective in himself. he's being a detective in his own dressing down of the actual detective and what they're wearing, and said, "Oh no, he had a V-neck vest on. No, it was a V-neck waistcoat. That's how good I am. That's accurate." He's just getting it right to the point. That's because he's got the detective instinct. And also sticking some paper under the door at 8 p.m. That's such a great line too. I don't want to make this all just saying, "Oh, that's a great line," but for this song, that is it.
I
That
was gonna
is,
say he pulls the full band back for this, or yeah, it looks like most of all of them, and then they
yeah,
don't really go anywhere musically with it, but the
no,
just the sound is it's ominous, right? It's
yeah,
a good and
yeah.
like you said, the lyrics are on point with the ominous tone.
And we know that the two tenets of the fall are repetition or it's not repetition, it's discipline. And this song shows the discipline and the discipline that maybe the detectives that are not that successful or not that having too much integrity, it shows that the fall actually have a lot of integrity and discipline to hold back for that long and let Mark just do his, like you said on the last song, it's going to be more of a reading. It's going to be more of a little read through.
Just let me read, and you do what you want. You never even heard these words before. Just
Right.
get the ideas together.
So this album has been, for the last few songs, very topical. Like there's a topic and Mark is talking about it, and it's not really a story. There's little story aspects in there, but for the most part, it's very topical. And we get to these final two tracks, and we get one more topical. We get actually, I think both of these are topical for the most part. We get a little topical piece about being in the studio
Yeah, I was gonna
and a
say
little experience.
Mark described this album as me going off on a tangent. Most of the songs are about Britain as I see it on a wider scale, having been abroad a lot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I like that. That's actually a good summation. I mean, coming from the man himself and the basically the control master of this album, that makes total sense. He's got the countryside, he's got the city, he's got also the tourist or the British character that goes away, right, to South America and then sees Britain from afar. And then he has the police state, and then we go into closest to home for Mark, which is the studio. I'm just going to call them the interrupters that come in. Let's listen to
Solicitor in studio.
Young pigs make TV. Get on my way from me. Young pigs make TV.
this. Sounds like someone's demo, right? It sounds like someone's home demo in all aspects, but because the fall are so organic and natural, it just sounds so cool. I think that's the secret, is to really believe in it. Because they have no sort of second guessing themselves once they're actually doing it. And that's what makes the fall the fall. It's all about just, for Mark and for the rest of the band, it was being fully present in that one performance. And I think that's why they were so good. They didn't think there was going to be a second take, so there was never an
Yeah.
assumption that there would be.
Yeah, there's never any holding back, and if
There's
you're
no
if you're playing it, you're committed. Keep going.
You're committed, right? And yeah. And you're also, because you know there's probably no chance or limited chance of an overdub, a second take if you fuck up, you're also committed to being a little bit also safe, right? You're also going to be repetitive and safe. You're not going to go off and play a crazy bass solo turnaround unless you really feel like you can nail it.
Yeah,
And
and nail it again, and then 3 or 4 more times, right? Like,
yeah, over and over again, right? Little keyboard.
little feedback.
And I like the feedback as well.
Mark's screech must have been a little rough that day. He couldn't hit that note.
I like the feedback a lot. This is actually going along our theme of production mishaps that are good. That might have been Mark just covering the microphone for feedback at any given point. And also the mix of this one is cool, where the guitar just gets thrown at you and blown out, and the bass is pummeling. Like I said earlier, it sounds like someone's home studio demo, but way cooler and way more meaningful delivered. Mark Riley keyboard solo at the end, really just tying up this package in a nice little neat bow.
Those young dicks making TV.
Yeah, and for all the audio files out, or for all the audio engineers out there, if you listen to this track relatively loud, or at about 440-ish mark, 442 mark, you can hear them cut a track, not fade a track out, but cut I think a guitar track end out, and then the whole stereo image comes back to you, which is really cool. Which is like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like that feedback guitar that I'm guessing Craig is playing is feeding back, and then they ended the track right there about 442, and they cut it out, and then the whole stereo image comes back more full, and you actually hear, the left side of your eardrum come back in. And this is just showing underrepresented document of fall discography, a really cool thing of hearing them in the studio. I just wish it was the full band the whole time, but I don't want to get ahead of us because we do have one more track.
You ready for the Pope?
I'm not really ready for this at all, but because I am so familiar with it at this point, I think the Pope is going to visit, and we just got to be ready, and let's just get it underway.
Here comes Papal Visit.
plays on this one? I need to know who plays on this one.
I got Smith is the
Yeah,
only
I know.
only one credited.
I mean, it makes the most sense that Smith is the only one credited for this because there's not a whole lot going on.
Do you think that's him playing the guitar like a violin? I think that's just a guitar. They're playing with a
No,
bow.
that's a violin fiddle. That's what it sounds like where a person is, and I've experienced this a lot because this is probably the extent of my own violin cello playing, is where you put maybe 1-2 fingers down on the notes where it sounds good, where you're playing across a couple strings. But because it sounds good right there, you're not going to move those those fingers very far. So the rest of the song is pretty much just taking advantage of those couple of notes you can hit that sound like it's in tune for the track. And it sets the parade. The parade is about to happen. It sounds like it sounds like it's going to be a messy a messy visit. I take this song for what it is, which is a Mark sound collage.
Yeah, Mark had an idea, and he was determined.
Mark had an idea. Mark had an idea is right.
He was greatly moved by Pope John Paul II came and visited Britain. I think he came over to Heaton Park where Mark was close to where Mark lived. So he was in the mix of it.
He was at the pub down the street watching it on TV or something.
Yeah, pissed because he couldn't walk to his next favorite bar because the roads were closed.
Yeah, so the roads were blocked off. Right. As much as I'm putting it down, this is not the worst Mark initiated sound collage. This is actually very palatable. And also his delivery of the lyrics is somewhat soothing. Like his mumbling.
It's quiet. It's a little whisper.
I feel like I'm in the room with him. It's actually best when the violin actually takes a break at points and actually lets you sit in a little smoky church with Mark as the hip priest, giving you a little mumbled, whispered, maybe in the confessional, right? You go into the confessional and you get a little whispered, mumbled, written gospel from Mr. Marquis Smith to you. That's not so bad. That's not a bad way to take this one in. Actually, yeah, it actually helps me. I'm all for, the abstract ambient sound collages, but sometimes I need a little bit of a texture.
Yeah, I know. Mark said that. So yeah, he was living in the park, and it says that he was seeing all of these priests, or his security was sweeping the gardens in the area looking for bombs and threats and things like that because the Pope was coming. And he said that there was a loyalist from Belfast that ran at the Pope with a big butcher knife, and they struggled him to the ground. It sounds like it was the priests, though. It's all bishops and cardinals struggled him to the ground. So I don't know if this was.
That's a good image for Mark to pull, though.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
if it happened or not, it's a good image for Mark.
You gotta be first in the assassin line.
The way he uses human trash roam the town, or human trash come for the visit, is so oh my god, it's so funny. It's so funny that he's just watching these people come in for this visit and thinking that they are going to have an experience that is unlike anything they're going to ever experience, and what they're going to get, he knows, is they might make it live up to it in their own psyche, but he knows that this is not going to be anywhere close to any sort of religious experience that is going to be something for them to take something away from. As as a positive thing, and just outline the preparation for it, and the helicopters stripping the land. That is so good. It's so fun. Oh, and they line up in a assassin's line.
Gonna be the first
Hmm.
for the first time in the assassin line. Yeah.
First time in the assassin line.
Well, that's it, folks.
I gotta say that one's growing on me. That's growing on me, and that's why it's good to listen to these. It doesn't matter how many times I don't know how many times I listened to this album, but that's why it's always fun, and that's why we appreciate you all being with us and listening, hopefully along with us, or at least getting intrigued by our discussion, so that we can have this experience together. Because I think just listening with your buddy, listening with your friend, and giving you the motivation to listen to it fresh, or listen to it for the millionth time, you get something out of it when you experience it with someone else. So you get the sounding board. So fun. So, oh, did you hear that?
I did.
Mark has just exited the confessional booth and cracked open that Boddington's, and he is ready for us to deliver the sacrifice of what is awarded to such a unique and interesting artistic experience that we've gone on today.
I'm gonna go with.
I feel like it's grown on you. I feel like it's grown on you even in this last listen.
This last listen through, pay attention to the lyrics.
I feel like you might have gone from one or two to
Right.
multiple.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a 5 Boddingtons,
Okay.
one for each of the members of the band that I wish played all the songs, excluding Mark. He can have his own. He can bring his own.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely has. I think just listening early on, I was like, man, I think that first car ride into work playing it, I was like, this is not what I've.
Oh, you were going into work you were ready to roll.
Ready to roll for my Papal visit.
Papal inspection once you got in there.
It has gotten better. The A side is good, B side is, whatever. You get the experiment, right? The fall is an experiment.
Yeah.
It's a soundscape that, if you let it, it will take you to different places that you might not be used to feeling, but they can definitely be enjoyable.
I think that's the right perspective for this one. For only 7 tracks, I feel like you get so much more than what's in here. I mean, obviously, probably by the length of this episode, you're getting a lot more bang for the buck than you're really that's documented on the cover.
I mean, no short songs, but no really long songs either. 6 minutes isn't that
for
crazy
the fall?
for a fall.
6 minutes?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, but
no.
Yeah, it is a full experience. You're not like, oh, where's the rest of it?
I think for my ranking of this album, just to summarize it once more, this is a great document of the fall. And I think this is one that, if you are even a moderate fall fan, and I take it that most of our listeners and our fall heads out there are above that, but even if you were to consider getting someone into the fall that has some sort of interesting perspective on the world and creative instinct, this one I think I would give to one of those individuals as an initial gateway into the fall. And I'm going to go back to my rule of thumb here, and I'm going to modify our system as it's meant to be modified. And if you are a brand new fall listener and you get this album I'm going to say take the 7 Boddingtons, 7 pints, 7 tracks, 7 pints. If you are an experienced fall listener, I say you don't need more than 3.5 pints to make you really kind of take you to the next level of enjoying yourself fully for this album. Thank you all again for hanging out with us. If you've noticed that you're missing a couple of the numerical ordered episodes in your podcast feed, you need to jump over to Patreon and join us and make sure you're getting all of the bonus episodes and all of the extra fall albums that you may be missing out on, so that you can keep up with us in our journey of the fall discography. So join us and follow us on We Are the Fall Pod on all the social media, so you can get all the trailers and extra bonus things that we're up to and going to be providing for you. And if you have any insights and recommendations, shoot us a message. We'd love to chat with you. And we've already chatted with a bunch of our friendly fall heads out there, and we look forward to doing more of it.
Because, we are the fall.
And we are the best.